One of the joys of patchwork knitting is being able to knit a piece and join it to another piece as you're working along. This jacket in front of me at the moment is an example of knitted strips which have then been joined to make a feature of the seams. It starts with a triangle first at the top, and then a piece is cast on, and as this piece here is being knitted, it's also being joined to the top piece through this chain edge. This one is being joined at the end of a right side row. We have the same seam on the other side, which is being joined on a wrong side row. So in this first video I'm going to show you how to join one strip to another at the end of right side rows, but my pieces will be showing you just straight knitted strips. This piece, which is 3 bias strips joined together, shows you the seam join here and here. So I'm now going to put this piece aside and start to demonstrate how I would join one piece to another. This is my first piece that's already been knitted, and I've just knitted it in garter stitch, but I have got my nice chain selvage along the edge on both sides. It's very important with this particular seam join to learn to knit your pieces with a chain selvage in order to get a nice regular looking seam. I've done another video which demonstrates how to knit a basic strip with the chain selvage. I have already started this piece of knitting, as you can see here, and I have got my chain selvage on each side in the same way as I worked this piece. So you could start right at the bottom, but because I've already got several rows, I'm going to start several rows up from the bottom, just to show you, for example, if you wanted to start a piece with a small slit in it. So to start with, let me just move this one to the side. We're still starting the piece with a knit one through the back loop for the chain selvage, and then I'm going to knit across to the last stitch. Now when we get to the last stitch, this is where things change slightly. So this is my right side, and that's indicated by the fact that I've put a stitch marker into the fabric to tell me this is the right side of the knitting. I've got to my last stitch, but at the moment I'm not going to move the yarn. I'm going to slip the last stitch knitwise, as if I was going to knit it, onto my right needle. I'm then going to pick up my existing piece, and I'm going to join it 1, 2, 3 on the 4th chain up. So that's 1, 2, 3. This is the 4th chain up. So I'm going to start joining my piece here. And it's very important that you go through both legs of the chain. Right? Don't just go through the front bit, you need to go right through, as if you're going straight through the fabric to the back. So you should have 2 loops on your needle from the fabric. And I'm now going to knit, pull a loop through, and then lift the slip stitch over. And that's my first join worked. I now turn the knitting, and again this is where the chain selvage changes at the joining end. I've just worked this stitch, so in order to make it a chain I have to slip it purlwise with the yarn at the front, because I don't want to have a loop across the right side of my knitting. So the yarn nearest me, slip the stitch, and then I move the yarn between the needles and work to the last stitch in the row. The last stitch of the row, which is the free end of the new strip, I work the chain selvage as the normal method, which would be to bring the yarn forward and slip the last stitch purlwise. Turn. I'm now going to knit through the back loop because this is the free end. So that's the normal chain selvage at the beginning of a right side row. Just wind off some more yarn. Work across to the last stitch. Leave the yarn where it is for the moment. Slip the last stitch knitwise as if I was going to knit it. Look for the next chain. So this here is the next chain. That was the first one I joined, so this is the next one. I'm going to go under both loops of the chain, take the yarn around, lift the slip stitch over and turn. So now I've got the selvage at the joining end. So this time I'm just going to slip purlwise with the yarn at the front, move the yarn to the back and knit to the last stitch. If you're working a different stitch pattern, once you've slipped that joining stitch, you would then just move the yarn to wherever it needs to be to work the next row. Right, I've got to the end of the row, so I bring my yarn forward, slip the free end purlwise, so as if you were going to purl. It is important to understand whether you're slipping your stitch knit or purlwise, because it will stop the stitch from being twisted. If I had slipped this stitch knitwise, it would twist the stitch and wouldn't give you such a nice neat row of chain. So again, knit one through the back loop, knit to the last stitch of the row, so this is my joining point. So I'm leaving the yarn where it is. This time I slip the stitch as if it was to knit, and the reason for that is that it then keeps the chain as a nice open loop when you slip the stitch over. Again, I'm looking for the next chain up my edge, which is here, under both legs of the chain, knit and lift the slipped stitch over. So if we look at this edge, on this side I'm getting nice cream coloured chains, which are from the sample that I'm currently knitting, and on this side I've got the blue chains from the first piece of knitting. Beginning of the wrong side row with the yarn at the front, slip one purlwise and then knit to the last stitch. Yarn forward, slip the last stitch purlwise. So you can see now that at the end of every right side row I'm joining to the existing strip. I'd keep on working backwards and forwards and joining to each chain up the edge here until I get to the top, and on the last one I would join, and then I'd be casting off on my last row to join my two pieces together. And as you can see down the bottom here I have got an open section which has the same number of chains, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, so that sometimes when you're working this type of technique you may want, particularly for example in a garment, to have a gap at the beginning of your knitting, because generally it's worked from the bottom up, so that you join your two pieces further into the knitting. All varies depending on what you're trying to achieve at the end. So that's how to join one strip, the new strip, to an existing strip at the end of a right side row.